Hello and welcome to another Learn English by Reading video. My name is Reese from EnglishWithReese.com, and today we'll be reading an article called Woman Delivered Her Own Baby in Car Traveling at 60 miles per hour. Now, if this video is too fast for you, there is a button in the bottom right-hand corner that you can use to slow this video down. So in today's lesson, we're going to be using this article to improve our grammar, our vocabulary, and our pronunciation. So without further ado, let's get into it. Woman delivered her own baby in car traveling at 60 miles per hour. I think we should start with this word, delivered. Okay, so when we usually use the word to deliver, we're talking about giving someone a letter from somebody else, or maybe you ordered some food online and someone is delivering it for you. But when you deliver a baby, it means you give birth to a baby. A baby comes out of you. Okay, so she gave birth in her own car, traveling at 60 miles per hour. And you'll notice that we just shorten that to MPH, which you might already be used to. A woman gave birth to her daughter at 60 miles per hour as her partner sped through flooded roads trying to reach a hospital in Cumbria. Okay, we're going to start with some vocab. And first of all, I want to look at this one, sped. Now, you probably already know the word speed. And did you know that speed can also be a verb, to speed? And we're talking about driving when you're going too fast on the road. Maybe there is a 20 miles per hour limit and you're going at 30. You are speeding. So, of course, sped is the past tense of speed. And then we have flooded. You probably already know the word flood. That's when there is too much water on the ground. So there is like a big layer of water. It's difficult to walk through. It's difficult to drive through. Okay, we're using flooded here as an adjective. When you add ed to the end of some words, you make an adjective. So this woman is driving through flooded roads. So the water's quite high, but she needs to get through anyway. So there's a bit of a challenge. Now for some pronunciation, listen to the first part of this sentence. A woman gave birth to her daughter. Okay, so actually I'm not saying to, and I almost never say to. I just say t. Just one sound almost, right? A woman gave birth to her daughter. A woman gave birth to her daughter. Okay, that's the natural way to say it. To doesn't hold so much information, so we kind of say it and we move on as fast as we can. Chiara Musetti, 28, was just minutes away from Furness General Hospital when baby Sienna popped out as her partner James Spence, 32, rounded a roundabout. Okay, so let's look at some vocab here. We have the word roundabout. Okay, so this is something that's very common on UK roads, but not so common in other places in the world. We're talking about this. You can see there are no traffic lights, no red light to tell you when to stop, no green light to tell you when to go. You can always go because it's a circle. So this saves time on the roads, which is quite nice. And in this photo, I don't think many people would be walking there, so we don't need extra things like zebra crossings or traffic lights. So James Spence, who is the partner in this story, rounded the roundabout. In other words, he was going around the roundabout when the baby popped out. Now notice this, they're using quote marks around popped out. The reason for that Well, there could be two reasons. One is that it is a quote. It might be something that Chiara or James said. Okay, by doing this, we know as the reader, this is what they said. The other reason might be that popped out isn't very formal, and newspapers like formal language. So by putting the quote marks there, it's telling us, the reader, that this isn't the language they usually use, but it does describe what happened pretty well. So what is popped out? Well, to pop out means to jump out of something. Okay, so the baby popped out, the baby jumped out of something. But we could also pop out of a big birthday cake, for example. Or we pop out of a hole. Some animals, like rabbits, pop out their heads out of the hole to see if there are any predators around. Now, something that news articles like to do is this. They say somebody's name, comma, age, comma. That happens quite often, and it's just a way to give some extra information. So, Chiara Musetti is 28 years old. They could have put Chiara Musetti, an NHS doctor. You know, they could have put anything in there. It's just a way to add extra information. It's like saying Reese, comma, an English teacher, comma, is making a video. Now let's talk pronunciation quickly. This says as her, but I never say as her in normal conversation. I'm more likely to say as a. Okay, so Sienna popped out as a partner. As a partner. Okay, so these are words that only hold a little information, like I said earlier. And these kinds of words, we often speed through them. We get through them very quickly because we don't think they add that much. It's more important to say that Sienna popped out and to say partner James Spence. As a just puts those things together. Throughout the 45-minute journey from their home in Windermere, the couple had to repeatedly stop their car to check that they could make it through the flooded roads. Let's start with this word, throughout. It just means the whole time. This was happening the entire time. And in this example, the entire 45 minutes, they were doing this. Now here's something that some of you may not know. We can actually make adjectives with numbers, okay? 45-minute journey. We could also say the calm journey, the wonderful journey, but we're using numbers here, the 45-minute journey. Another time you might see this is with ages. So maybe an 80-year-old man, okay? We're going to put the dashes there. 80-year-old is the adjective. A man, a smart man, an 80-year-old man. Then we have this word repeatedly. If you have seen my re video, you'll know that re means again and again. And actually, that's what repeatedly means, okay? So you could think of the word re-watch, repeatedly watch, like that. And here, repeatedly is just the word on its own. Repeatedly stop is our example here. And they had to check that they could make it. In other words, they had to check that they could go forward through the flooded roads. Remember, I said flooded is all of that water. Now, sometimes the water gets so high that a car can't go through it. The car would break, it would flood. So they have to check it all the time. We were about 10 minutes from the hospital when my waters broke. Then I knew the birth was going to happen pretty quickly. About 5 minutes later, her head started coming out, she said. Okay, so we're using the word about here to mean around. She doesn't know if it was 10 minutes, but it felt like 10 minutes. It was around 10 minutes. It was about 10 minutes. And she says her waters broke. Okay, this is a very specific phrase for when we are having a baby. Okay, so for those of you that know anything about when someone has a baby, you'll know that before anything happens, all this water comes out and spills down her trousers and onto the floor. It's an unfortunate start, I would imagine. So her waters broke. We can imagine a balloon filled with water, okay? And when that breaks, all the water comes out. That's kind of what's happening in the human body. Then I knew the birth was going to happen pretty quickly. And for those of you that know commas well and know when to use them, you might notice that in this article and some of the other articles I've read with you, don't use commas all the time. So for example, if I wrote this, I would put a comma here. Okay, about 5 minutes later, comma, her head started coming out. I would put that comma there to make it easier to read, so you understand where the parts of the sentence are. But you don't have to do this. Commas are mostly a style choice. So sometimes when you're reading, you kind of have to put the commas in yourself, or kind of figure out where the sentence parts are yourself, like you do in this article. We'd been trying to stay calm through the journey, but when she started coming out, we were screaming. Now here is somewhere else where I might put a comma. The reason is that this part of the sentence is a when clause. So when she started coming out, we were screaming, okay? I think we need something there. It's the same as an if clause, okay? So if she started coming out, we need a comma here. She would be screaming, okay? It's a similar sentence here with if. Now, when you have a when sentence or an if sentence, I really recommend we put that comma in there, or people are going to get confused. When we got to the hospital, my partner ran out without any shoes or socks because he'd taken them off to test the flood waters. I think we need to start with flood waters. Now that's just a noun to describe the water in the flood. It's as simple as that. Sometimes it's quite nice. We can take two simple words and just put them together to make another simple word that is more specific. It's like sea water, seawater. Okay, there's lots of cool examples like that in English. Now let's check out this verb, to test. Now I think we all know the noun test. You know, we take a test, we try to get 100%. But sometimes we test something. Like in the school, the teacher is testing you. The teacher tests her students. And what that means is the teacher is trying to know how much these students have learned. And in our example here, the partner tested the flood waters. Okay, so we'll have to use our imagination a little bit. What could he be testing? Maybe it's the temperature, maybe it's the viscosity, or probably it's the depth, how high the water is, how deep it is. Okay, so that's what he's testing. He walked out there with his shoes and his socks off to test the depth of the flood, to see if the car can go through. And there's that to again. I'm not saying to test, I'm saying to test. He told them what had happened. Then the midwives ran out to me. They couldn't believe I'd given birth in the moving car. Let's start with this phrase, to give birth, or she had given birth. That just means somebody has pushed the baby out. Okay, the baby has come out of you. You have given birth. Okay, so the baby hasn't given birth. The baby has been born. The baby is born. The mother gives birth. Just like that. And we have this job title here, midwives. Okay, that's the plural. Midwife is the singular. So a midwife is the special kind of nurse who helps the patient, the lady, give birth to the baby. Now, a bit of grammar. Had happened. Why are we saying had happened? Why don't we say he told them what happened? Well, we can say that, but had happened gives us some more information. It tells us when things happened. Okay, so we could extend this sentence. He told them what had happened before we arrived at the hospital. So let's look at this on a timeline. That will help us to better understand this tense. So we've got 3 events here. She gave birth in the car, she arrived at the hospital, and now she is talking to the midwives. So when we say had happened, we are not talking about one event ago. We are talking about 2 or more events ago. Okay. I could give you another example. Before I started recording this video, I had eaten my lunch. Okay, so we're going back 2 events. Okay, there's now, I started the video, I ate lunch. Okay, so some of you will already know that this is called the past perfect tense, and it's quite common in British English and many other dialects of English, but not so much in American English. They don't use this so often over there. They'll just use the past simple, like he told them what happened. But I think using the past perfect helps us to be more specific with our words, and really, that's what language is about. Getting my thoughts out of my mouth into your ears and into your brain, okay? And your brain and my brain, as much as possible, should have the same idea. So being specific with the way we speak really helps these 2 brains to understand the same idea. Okay, let's move on. Ms. Musetti was taken into the hospital where she was kept for 12 hours of observation before being discharged. We've got a couple of advanced words in here. She was kept for 12 hours of observation. Now, you might know the word observe. That is the simple verb of it. Observation is the noun. But what does it mean? It just means to watch. And in a hospital, they're probably watching to see if she's okay or to see if anything changes. Okay, she wasn't in a perfectly clean place to have her baby. So maybe they want to check she hasn't caught a disease or an infection or something like that. And of course, I'm sure they wanted to check that the baby was okay too. After the 12 hours of observation, she was discharged, okay, which just means to come out. We usually use this in a hospital setting. It just means the doctors have said, okay, you are free to leave. We are confident that you will be okay to leave now, okay? So let me say this again in simple English. Ms. Musetti was taken to the hospital where she was kept for 12 hours while doctors and nurses watched her before they said, oh, it's okay, you can go home now. I've got a couple more weak forms here. I've got for and of. These 2 words are almost never said as for and of. They are said as f and of. Okay, f, of. So I'll say that again, and you listen for f and of. Miss Musetti was then taken into the hospital where she was kept for 12 hours of observation before being discharged. Sienna is doing really well now and is the most chilled out baby, which is shocking considering her entrance, Ms. Musetti said. So check out this first part. She is doing really well. Now, when we say doing, in this sort of context, we're not being specific. We just mean everything about her is well at the moment. And this well is the same as, how are you? I'm well. Okay, it's just, I'm good, I'm all right. And she is the most chilled out baby. Okay, so here's another phrasal verb. It just means relaxed. She is a relaxed baby. She's not screaming too much. She's not crying too much. She's just happy to lie there, be a bit lazy, and just relax. And that's shocking in other words, it's surprising. Considering, okay, so it's surprising when you think about her entrance, when you think about the way she came in to the world. Okay, so in other words, Sienna is well at the moment and she is relaxed, which is surprising when we think about the way that she came into the world. Okay, so what I like to do after I have gone through the grammar, vocabulary and pronunciation is just read the entire article again. That way you get to hear what a native sounds like naturally. So I encourage you to read along as I read. Try to keep up and try to remember all the little notes I've made. Okay. Before I do that, I'd like to ask you to subscribe if you've learned something today. That would really help me out a lot, and it would help other English learners to find my videos. Okay, let's jump into it. Woman delivered her own baby in car traveling at 60 miles per hour. A woman gave birth to her daughter at 60 miles per hour as her partner sped through flooded roads trying to reach a hospital in Cumbria. Chiara Musetti, 28, was just minutes away from the Furness General Hospital when baby Sienna popped out as her partner James Spence, 32, rounded a roundabout. Throughout the 45-minute journey from their home in Windermere, the couple had to repeatedly stop their car to check that they could make it through the flooded roads. We were about 10 minutes from the hospital when my waters broke. Then I knew the birth was going to happen pretty quickly. About 5 minutes later, her head started coming out, she said. We'd been trying to stay calm through the journey, but when she started coming out, we were screaming. When we got to the hospital, my partner ran out without any shoes or socks because he'd taken them off to test the floodwaters. He told them what had happened, then the midwives ran out to me. They couldn't believe I'd given birth in the moving car. Miss Musetti was then taken into the hospital, where she was kept for 12 hours of observation before being discharged. Sienna is doing really well now and is the most chilled out baby, which is shocking considering her entrance, Ms. Musetti said. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it. That will also help me out a lot. And remember, the transcript and the link to check out my English learning website are in the description. I'll see you next time.